The Elder Scrolls Online is a standout MMORPG due to its fully voiced NPCs,
That's it then? Seen the world thrice over and none the worse for it, eh?
breathtaking landscapes, and immersive soundtracks, all making for an inviting world that's genuinely fun to explore. But with a decade's worth of content and a dedicated community of longtime players, it's natural for newcomers to wonder whether they can catch up and truly enjoy The Elder Scrolls Online in 2024, 10 years after its initial release. The answer to this question really depends on what you're looking for, but there's no doubt that ESO is incredibly new player friendly. ESO has struck a great balance between its single-player roots in the Elder Scrolls universe and the more traditional MMO elements, like events and grind-type challenges to keep you consistently playing. But if you don't care for the typical MMO gameplay, you'll be pleased to learn that the game's overworld is vast and greatly welcomes solo and casual play, though there are pieces of the game where you'll need to bring others. Having said that, a major contributor to ESO's success is the game's inviting and helpful community. But you are also encouraged to find your own pace and engage with others when and if you are comfortable doing so. ESO is an MMO, however, so there is no way to turn off seeing other players, but you can ignore social activities if you choose to. There will be some areas of the game that require you to catch up, but these are typically systems intended for long-term growth that you'd find in other MMOs, like gaining currency, collecting gear, or training intended to increase the usefulness of your horse. However, unlike similar MMOs, ESO has horizontal level progression, and gear will always drop at your level. Each time you make a new character, you will have to progress them to level 50. But once you hit level 50, you reach champion point levels. CP is shared between each of your characters, so you can progress your overall level on any character who has hit 50. But even characters under 50 can slot and use champion points. In-game achievements are the same. Progress towards completion is combined and shared between your characters. The maximum character level is 3,600, but the gear cap is, and has stayed at, 160 for much of the game's life. This stops old sets from becoming irrelevant and really helps minimize that feeling of needing to catch up for both new and returning players. Combat is the same, with enemies and even your own damage numbers scaling to your level. There is no level gating, and from the start you can go just about anywhere and play with friends despite any level differences. The combat in ESO doesn't have the feel of a single-player Elder Scrolls game, instead making use of traditional MMORPG elements, like combat timers, ideal rotations for using your skills, and a global cooldown before you can use another skill. It also makes use of the typical tank, healer, and damage dealer group dynamics. ESO does, however, offer a lot of freedom, like throwing melee weapons or a bow on a mage, for example. But because of the freedom the game offers, it can be really easy to unintentionally gear or skill yourself out of your desired role. Most players either love or hate the combat system, due largely to the difficulty and scaling. A common complaint among players is that combat throughout the Overland Zone content feels too easy. This makes for a better initial play experience for new players, but if you complete exclusively Overland content, your character could begin to feel weak or unprepared for group content. Many of the game's tutorials are text entries in the help files, and harder bosses use visual or speech cues, some of which aren't super obvious. Tutorials for systems or specific content are heavily reliant on the player community, which has created a skill and knowledge gap between casual and hardcore players. If you're someone who wants a challenge like PvP combat, or to put together a team and progressively improve for raiding, there are absolutely options for that harder content. In fact, some of the hardest titles and completions in the game have been completed by very few. There's almost always room to improve or things you can still complete if you choose. The endgame in ESO is really what you decide to make of it. There are endgame traders, raiders, PvPers, housing enthusiasts, dungeon crawlers, and players who do a little of everything. You can choose what areas you want to focus on and partake in. The downsides to this are, if you are someone who prefers to be directed or needs an objective, ESO doesn't do that. And that freedom can make the amount of content feel overwhelming for some people. The other downside is it spreads the endgame community too thin, making it harder to find a group in the endgame with the same focus as you. Customization in ESO has a lot of options, like housing and designing your character's outfits. For many, fashion is the true endgame. You are, of course, able to customize your character at the start of the game, but after character creation ends, you will need to spend crowns to alter their physical features, like eye color, height, or face shape. You can, however, add items to your collection like hairstyles and skins that can be applied right from your collection menu. You can add to your own collection via the Crown Store, but also by completing achievements, by partaking in monthly or seasonal events, watching live streams for Twitch drops, and simply by logging in. If you have friends you're joining, be sure to pick the same alliance if you're planning to engage in the Alliance War. This is a large-scale player versus player game mode that pits the alliances against each other, so you'll need to be on the same team or spend crowns to swap. It's also important to know that your character is locked into the class that you pick for it. There is no way to change it, not even a crown alternative. So feel free to do some research and try out different classes before you settle on one. For a pure lore enjoyer, ESO has plenty to offer. Storytelling in the game has peaks and valleys, with some zones really standing out in this area. The game is massive, however, and if you're going from area to area picking up quests, it will be no time before your journal has reached its capacity. If you're someone who likes to play games in the order they were written or intended, ESO can be tough to navigate with 10 years worth of content to dive into, but there is plenty to do. The game lets you join 5-player guilds at a time, and does have a player trading system, but it doesn't offer the traditional auction house, instead requiring guilds to bid on control of a physical trader location throughout the world. Shopping in the game often requires trips to different towns and cities to find what you're looking for. Players on PC will have the option to use add-ons to improve the user experience in various aspects, like this one, but console players don't have options for add-ons. Finally, ESO's payment model is pretty fair. The base game is cheap and often given away for free, containing hundreds of hours of content alone. But you also have the option to buy the collection version of an expansion, which would include the base game, current expansion, and all previous expansions. If you hold off on buying, you're basically getting rewarded with a huge amount of content when you do finally take the plunge, making for a very new player-friendly purchase model. However, expansions and DLC are different, and this can create confusion when players are deciding what they want to buy. These smaller DLC packs are not included in the collection editions, but they are included as part of the optional subscription. When you're subbed to ESO Plus, you're essentially renting access to all of the content the game offers, excluding the newest expansion to release. There are also some additional benefits to the sub that are hard to live without if you're someone who ends up really committed to playing, like the craft bag that holds infinite crafting resources, and overall increases to inventory. But the sub is optional, so you can decide if it's worthwhile for you or not. And as mentioned, ESO does have an in-game shop too, with a special currency for purchase called crowns, some of which you'll also receive with a sub. You can use them to buy content for permanent access after your sub ends, or to buy cosmetics, horses, houses, furnishing to decorate your houses, and other time-saving extras. But the game does not push its real-world economy in your face, and is entirely optional. Some players are unhappy with the number of cosmetics that end up sold for crowns versus as earned rewards, but the game is definitely not paid to win. It's paid for convenience and to look extra fancy. The time-saving crown options do include things like leveling skill trees, but it's important to call out that you do need to level these skill trees organically once before the purchase option is unlocked for your account. Experience scrolls are also for sale, and these could fall into the pay-to-win bucket. But ESO offers free XP boost options too, often appearing in the items that you can get daily for signing in and as craftable drinks. You can also use your crowns to buy crown crates for a chance at flashy mounts and other collectibles. But the drop rates on the most sought-after items that come out of them are incredibly low. There is, however, an earned currency called Endeavors that you can get through completing daily and weekly challenges that allows you to buy crate items without spending. Research your crown purchases before you make them. Sure, you can buy a vampire bite with crowns, but should you? This is an example of an item you can get completely for free from other players, simply by asking. Don't waste your crowns if you don't have to. As for how much longer the game will be updated, only ZeniMax knows the true answer. But with a new class added within the last year, money still coming in for them, and continuous updates still rolling out for this live service game, I'd imagine it will still be around for years to come. The game does not currently have crossplay or cross-progression, and any in-game purchases are locked to your chosen server, so try to get a feel for the player base before committing. Console populations are healthy, but PC population is higher. In summary, ESO is very new player friendly, very playstyle flexible, has the potential for much more content still to come, and is absolutely worth trying if you're interested, regardless of your platform of choice. As a day one player with over 12,000 hours spent enjoying the world that ZOS has built, the biggest issue that I see with ESO is player retention. There are tons of new players, but the endgame community struggles to maintain player count, either due to hard-hitting nerfs, skill gaps, sweeping meta changes, or the inability to find and build groups of like-minded players. If you do give the game a try, don't burn yourself out trying to level up quickly to catch up. ESO leans heavily into adventure, lore, and world building. It is all about the journey and exploration. A lot of the players that I see who rush to the endgame find themselves struggling or not wanting to stick around. If there's any questions you have or things you'd like to know before you give the game a try, feel free to leave a comment. Thanks for watching.